What is it? Oh, I couldn't find the email you sent me. I'm gonna say 5,600. Yeah.
We may make it. We're gonna talk.
Okay. Oh, thank you. So quiet.
Stephanie, I think everybody's ready to go. Can you start meetings early?
Just Stephanie has to be ready
Oh,
to go live. You ready? Okay.
oh, we're ready. Okay,
Yep.
why don't we get started? Why don't we get started? Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call our April the 6th meeting to order. Could we stand for pledge of allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, thank you. A roll call, please. Here.
Here.
Ms. Conley?
Here.
Mr. Moffett?
Here.
Dr. Parker?
Here.
Ms. Thorson?
Here.
Mr. Wilson?
Here.
We have two sets of minutes under tab 1 and tab 2. One is from our meeting on March the 2nd, and one is from a special call meeting on March the 24th. Could I have a motion to approve the March 2nd meeting, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, comments? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
And the second is our call on March the 24th. Could I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. In terms of the mayor's report, I really don't have much. There's a number of updates that you'll receive from all of the council members in some of our new business items, and then these very special presentations that we have. The only thing I would add, I had an opportunity to attend a meeting, Charleston Convention and Visitor Bureau Board of Governors. And this group does a remarkable job in terms of really their representation for the broader Charleston area. The staff made a presentation. They have a laundry list of metrics, criteria, from flights, seats, beds in hotels, meals, etc. It just went on and on and on. The trend lines are absolutely remarkable. They've like totally discounted 2020, so there's really no comparison in relationship to 2020. But everything was to 2019. And the trend lines are just, we're within like 70, 80, 90% of 2019 numbers. And it's, the trajectory is really quite remarkable. So there was a number of people on the call, and they're very, very optimistic. Restaurants and seating and new businesses, et cetera. So, and I think for those of us out here, we see it by traffic. I had an opportunity to go to the airport on Thursday for a pickup and yesterday for a drop-off, and it was busy. The roads were busy. So I guess that's all good news, and it's only going to increase over the next couple of months. So that's really my report. Citizen comments for agenda items? Any, Stephanie?
No,
None.
no one here, no.
Okay. Well, very good. The heart of the meeting. We have 3 very interesting presentations, and I thank all of you for coming this afternoon. Must have been rough coming out here in this horrible day and putting up with this. First is John Zolgar. So John, welcome. We've had a chance to meet John and appreciate the hard work that he's doing with the Johns Island Task Force.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
You just like that, I will have it
If I
ready
can
for
figure
you.
out how to do it.
Just push the buttons as you die.
Well, she's getting that. Oh, here we go.
I got the dates, all right.
As the mayor said, my name is John Zloga. I'm with the John Island Task Force, and we also have Mike McShane over here, who's also with the task force. And I've met with the mayor and Dan and some other folks recently, and based upon that meeting, they wanted me to come by and talk to a wider audience and to the rest of the council too. And so I put together a little presentation, but I do much better when you ask a lot of questions. So ask questions to go along, but basically, let's see if I can do this. What I need to point it here. There we go. So I don't have it going here.
Okay,
So I'll tell you what. Ah,
No, I just wanted to see.
it's doing it there, but not there.
Okay, let me get the other one.
Okay.
It always does this to me. I've tried it only 15 times today.
That's
so.
okay. So one of the things I think they wanted me to come to meet with you all about was the fact that you know, when you all talk about Johns Island, you know, what is Johns Island, who is Johns Island, and if you will, quote unquote, who represents Johns Island? And of course, no one really represents it other than our county and city representatives. But I think we are representative of Johns Island, is the way I like to put it. The group itself was formed about 2013. There you go. See if that works, though. There you go. Group formed about 2013, specifically, among other reasons, because of that. It's like when we talk to city and county officials, it was always, you know, boy, you guys are always against something. We have no idea what you're for, right? You really have no vision for the island. So it was formed, and Mike was one of the initial members, and we're basically advocates for the culture and the environment of the island. You know, and the participants are pretty much a wide swath of folks. Not only Sea Island residents, but as you can see on the right, hopefully you can see, oh, there you go, the center's a lot better. You can see that whole list of folks that are involved in it. From the standpoint of Kiowa, the town of Kiowa, the Kiowa Island Community Association, the Kiowa Conservancy, there's Seabrook folks here, there's folks from the county, zoning and planning, city zoning and planning, as well as residents. So again, our approach really is a big tent approach. Let's try to get everybody together and try to see what the issues are, and let's see how we can solve them. Now, we're not always going to agree with them, right? You know, each other. So we don't always take positions. But when we do agree, we're able to go to the county and the city and start talking about what we think the island needs. And one of the key things people often ask is, well, are you like with the city, with the county. We're not a governmental agency. We're a group of people, a group of grassroots folks that got together and realized there were issues that needed to be solved, and we're really about solving those problems. By the way, as we go through this, feel free to ask questions at any time. And one of the things, if you're familiar with the Ace Basin Task Force, which has done a tremendous job down in the Ace Basin in terms of conserving land, we're kind of patterning after that approach, where we do bring in this big town approach of bringing in all these other entities to be part of the task force. So we've got some guiding principles here. And the number one guiding principle is that Johns Island can be rural and urban. Now, that makes, what everybody's saying is, well, it's already built out, and we'll show you some things later on. And it's, it's already going to be urban. Well, if you really look at it, I think you probably know more than most folks. It takes you 10 minutes to go through rural Johns Island to get to any place. Most folks don't do that. They just stay along Maybank Highway, and that's all they see. And so all those folks that are along Maybank Highway or come to visit, the Fat Hand or the Wild Olive, they see that as Johns Island. And that is a good part of important part of Johns Island, but it's not the rural part of Johns Island rather. And so we're really about how do we preserve or conserve both the rural and the urban portion of it. And so, as I mentioned in the first slide, it's not about what we're against, it's what we're for. We're not against development, but we are for smart development, right? We're not against, power lines, right? We're for redundant power on the island. So it's really about the things that we are for, and that resonates very well with the city and county, because now there's somebody they can talk to about things that they're for. I mean, for example, we weren't against the putt-putt. We were for preserving the front door at Kiowa. I mean, it depends on how you look at it, right? That's kind of the approach that we take. And the other thing is that, folks do ask, what is Johns Island thinking? And the answer is, there's a lot of Johns Island. There's all these different neighborhoods. Mike and I both live off of Chisholm Road. If you go up Main, it's to the left of it. And I get down there very infrequently. And you folks probably don't go up Chisholm Road that often. And so there's all these different neighborhoods. And by neighborhoods, I don't mean subdivisions. I mean collections of people along, country roads and so forth. There are subdivisions within the within the Maybank area. And so that's in itself is a neighborhood, the whole Maybank area. So when you ask, what do we think? Well, we think a lot of different things. So it's sometimes difficult to come up with one consensus, which doesn't mean we can't, and we often do. And I'll give you an example of that. Hopefully you're familiar with that. It was the task force that identified that the county was going to rezone, upzone everything, including right around behind Freshfields. Right, they're going to add multi-thousand number of houses back there, and it was a task force that galvanized the community and got out there and said, "Hey, this isn't right. We shouldn't be doing this," and they backed out. So that's the type of thing we're talking about. We're trying to preserve the rural aspect of the island. So unified voice, common cause. We're here today. One reason is to get common cause with y'all. We're not always going to agree on things, but we'd like to be able to talk with you about that. What is it? What are your issues? What are our issues? Can we come to common agreement and go together to the county and the city with that common agreement? Now, one of the things we don't do, and I'll tell you right now, is we don't talk about roads. And the reason we don't talk about roads is because when the task force started, it got inundated with discussions about roads to the point that nothing else got accomplished. And so really roads are like the third rail for politics on this island. And so we just realized it's more important to deal with the things that we can actually accomplish and actually agree upon than deal with controversial things, specifically roads. With that in mind, though, all the participants are free to have their own opinion, join in whatever group they like to, relative to any topic there might be. Any questions?
Is there a separate task force that deals with the roads?
No, there's not a separate, no, there isn't. Now, I'll talk about a little bit going after this, but there's multiple organizations on the island, and the three, quote-unquote, main ones are Johns Island Council, Johns Island Community Association, and Johns Island Task Force. All three of them have a little different bent in terms of what their focus is, but I'll talk about those a little bit more.
Thank you.
Before I go any further, I really wanted to talk about the urban growth boundary. It is key to Johns Island. So the first question I'm going to ask is, does anybody here not know what the urban growth boundary is? And it's okay to raise your hand. So everybody knows. Oh, no. Okay.
No.
No? Okay, good. The, really, the urban growth boundary is, for all intents and purposes, a line on a map that the county and the city agreed to, that on one side, it's rural, and on the other side is urban. And this was put together, I think it was 2000, year 2000 as part of the county comp plan. And it is something which allows us to point to the zoning and the comprehensive plan to say, wait a minute, the comp plan says this should happen out here. It says there shouldn't be a large development out here. Or conversely, let's put the development where it belongs, i.e. along Maybank Highway. So that is absolutely key to everything we do. And when you hear about people talking about it being, Johns Island is completely built out, well, the way to look at it is, it's only that area really, there's a little bit down here by Key a little bit, that area up around Maybank that's really quote unquote built out, or almost built out. So it's only 21% of the island. So call it 20% of the island is being built out. Some of it is built out, but it's being built out. 80% right now of the island is designated not to quote unquote be built out. And that's a key thing to remember. The city is almost exclusively within the urban growth boundary, and one can imagine over time they will continue to annex land within the urban growth boundary to the point that everything within the urban growth boundary will be the city. Right now there's a lot of donut holes. If you ever, I think I've got a map of it later on. There's lots and lots of donut holes up there. You know, the fire and the police, they don't really care who they respond to. They figure out after the fact, you know, who they should be responding, which county or which jurisdiction it is. But one of the other things that's key here is you all have your own septic system, but the rest of the island, other than pretty much inside the urban growth boundary, is all on septic, not sewer. And that's really what keeps development outside of the urban growth boundary becoming too dense. And so keeping that sewer boundary with the Charleston water system where it is really also very critical from the standpoint of the rural and urban part of Johns Island.
John, you had
Yes.
mentioned 20 years ago that this was created, this
Right.
urban, was it predicated on that, the sewer line? Is that how this is,
No,
Just looking at the
Mike
map
may be able
here.
to answer that question better than me.
Mr. Mayor, my name is Mike McShane. I'm a resident of Johns Island. For disclosure, because I'm in a public meeting, I'm a former chairman of our Department of Natural Resources and current chairman of our South Carolina Conservation Bank. Just want to make, since it's a public forum. The state mandated every county put together a comprehensive plan in the 90s. Charleston County brought theirs in around 99 to 2000. And in that plan was this urban growth boundary. And to make sort of what then facilitated some of the debate that has been going on is that that line under the comprehensive plan should not move. What has moved, as an example, Angel Oak. The city moved that line to encompass the property around Angel Oak. That led to litigation, that then led to my involvement when I was chairman of the department to work on a settlement that then ultimately protected that property around the Angel Oak. Many of your constituents participated in that campaign to save that area. So it's really critical that that urban growth boundary line be maintained. That's what really holds back the unbridled growth that then has consequences that can come with it. It's tied to water and sewer within that urban growth boundary, and that is what facilitated sort of the idea of a comprehensive plan. I hope that gave you some.
Yeah, it's the urban growth boundary is something that the county has. In parallel with that, there's a memorandum of understanding between the Charleston Water System and St. John's Water Company that basically there's no sewer service outside of that boundary. So they're separate but very much related.
Thank you.
And, you know, the county looks at it as, the county does not, to my knowledge, doesn't do any sewer systems. It's all municipalities that do sewer systems. So given that the city is inside the urban growth boundary, they have no inclination to go outside that urban growth boundary. Now, there is a little bit of, maybe that's in the next slide here. Yeah, the next slide shows you a little bit, I don't know if I have a pointer here. Do I have a pointer? Whatever.
It's the center and it will only go on the screen.
What's that? Oh.
It'll only go on that.
Which one am I pointing? Oh, there you go, got it. Okay. And so, it's a little bit difficult to see. It's actually easier to see in the side ones. But this kind of pinkish area is the city. And you can see all what's called the donut holes all the way through here, all these pieces of property that are not part of the city yet. They will eventually be. There's a couple of anomalies here, and there's a little bit of the city right here, and a little bit of a large chunk of the city right here. But those were legacy issues. And so, really, since those, there's been no movement of the city outside the urban growth boundary here. You know, from the standpoint of jurisdiction on the island, you know, obviously there's Kiowa. You've got this, you know, where we are right now. Seabrook's got the marina, which is actually on John's Island. Believe it or not, Hollywood's got just a little bit here. And then we also deal with the Aviation Authority, the School District, Corps of Engineers, SCDOT, as well as St. John's Fire District. So there's a lot of people, which is part of the reason to have the big tent. There's a lot of entities we have to deal with. Any questions about that? So I won't read through this, but really, as I mentioned, our objective, our strategic objective, is to keep John's Island rural and urban. And I think, you know, you guys, I love your feedback on this. I think that aligns with what you want. I don't think you really want all of Betsy Harrison and River Road to look like Maybank Highway. I'm guessing that, okay? Okay, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Mayor. And so from that perspective, we're aligned. And everything we do is associated with that. And that's probably one of the things that distinguishes us from some of the other groups, is that's really our main focus. And we're doing this in different ways. We're talking about fortifying the UGB. You know, we work a lot with the city and county on ordinances, zoning ordinances. You know, we talked about keeping the sewer service outside of the, not letting it get outside the urban growth boundary. You know, the whole rural character. You know, there's heirs properties, there's farmland, there's tree canopies. To us, those are really important. You know, even with inside the UGB, the county and now the city are doing what they say our town and country book along the Maybank Highway. So instead of it being just a continuum of high density, they're having these little nodes of density. For example, on each end of Maybank, as well as like where the Fat Hen is in that area. So there's 3 or 4 nodes along there. They're trying to keep more concentrated, and then have a little bit of a less concentrated in between. So it doesn't look like Folly Road or Savannah Highway. And then, you know, the water events. I know that I've listened to some of the things that the Conservancy is doing, the Kiowa Conservancy is doing relative to, you know, understanding what all the water levels are and what the future's going to hold and so forth. So it's really, I'm sure, dear to your heart. And so we are very much involved in that too. As a matter of fact, I had a meeting today with the stormwater folks at the city, talking about how they can start instituting some of the Dutch dialogue recommendations. And so we're very much involved in that because we realize that we're on an island, a lot of lowland, a lot of wetlands, a lot of marsh, and we have to take that into consideration. So I mentioned, you know, common ground with Kiowa as well as Seabrook. You know, I just mentioned, I think I already talked about those two, is the thousands of houses that we're going to add around here, as well as the putt-putt. So a lot of common ground, I think, but there will be times we're not going to agree, which is okay too. But what I've told the mayor and Dan is that even if we don't agree, let's talk about what we don't agree. Let's, you know, in a very civil fashion, which is something perhaps hasn't always occurred in the past.
Hey, John?
Yes.
It might be fair to just to clarify one point. When John refers to there was a move by county staff to look at unintentionally adding thousands of homes because they were looking at how they could redefine affordable housing. And by doing that, it triggered in their formula system where it could have led to having the unintended consequence, having far greater density than they even wanted to. The task force had an opportunity to assess that. County staff listened to the task force and realized that the formula was throwing this out.
Right.
They didn't even see that. And it could have prevented, I think it did in fact prevent what would have been a horrific issue to deal with on this part of the island.
Right, exactly.
And along that line, we are certainly not against affordable housing, but we do believe two things. One is it should be close to transportation, close to businesses and so forth. And the second thing is the most affordable housing there is a house you live in. So, you know, if you start getting development pressures, before you know it, those folks can't live in those houses anymore. They may get $100,000 for that trailer or whatever it is, but you can't live any place in Charleston for $100,000. So now you've got an affordability problem that's even worse. So yes, affordable housing is a key issue right now in the county and the city. I am in no way going to go over this page. It's not intended to be read as much as to give you an idea of all the things that we're working on. And so there's a lot of things that are happening on Johns Island. I just want to pick out two of them. One of them, Grow Fruit Carolina relocation. If you're familiar with Grow Fruit Carolina, it's a wholesale distributor of local foods that was set up by the Coastal Conservation League, currently located on Meeting Street. Chances are, if you go to a restaurant and it says, I got my produce from here, my eggs from there, Grow Food most likely was the wholesaler for that. And it allowed smaller farmers who couldn't deal directly with a lot of retailers or commercial establishments to be able to sell their food at a good price. They're in the process now of selling their facility on Meeting Street. So we thought, geez, where's a great place to move a agricultural-based entity? Johns Island sounds like a pretty good place, doesn't it?
Yep.
And so we've been talking with them about how can does it make sense for you to come to Johns Island where you can be part of the community, you can provide jobs, people, quite frankly, driving back and forth from Ohio and every place else in Michigan, we'll see them on the side of the road, maybe start contributing to them. How can they add more value-added products, for the agricultural industry? A lot of good reasons to do that. And one of the locations we thought might be good, if you're familiar with the DeMare packing plant, it's there on Main Road, right by
The
cafe.
tomato shed.
The tomato shed, yeah. Great facility. It was set up for something like that. Whether they go there or not, we don't know. But from our standpoint, we think a location like that on Johns Island would be a perfect place for something that is all about food. So that's one thing we're working on recently. Another thing is you may or may not know that the Charleston County School District is going to put a new school on Johns Island.
Yeah.
They're talking about closing Mount Zion down, basically having it as a preschool, and then building a new school on the island. One of the locations they were originally looking at, because it was cheap land, if you go back to the Dutch dialogues, it was all on really, really low land. So A, it would need a lot of fill, but B, over time, it's going to need more fill, if you will. But more importantly, during times of water events, you're not even going to be able to get at the school. And often schools are centers for disaster relief and so forth. Couldn't even get to an application. So we've been started working with the school district to say, hey, where's a better place to put it? And again, why are we doing that? Because we're interested in the culture of the island, right? How can that school be a center of the community as opposed to someplace way off on the side that's flood prone? So that's kind of two of the things that we're working on. But it's two of many things. So you can see it kind of keeps us busy. Questions? You guys are an easy crowd.
John?
Yes, thank
When
you.
you say this is a simple question, but when you say that these are things that you all are working on, which you have a very long list of stuff there, I'm guessing there's more than just two of you.
Oh, yes, there is
So
a
is this
proxy.
that
Yes.
list of committee members, is it
Well,
Charlie's
so this is,
gonna join us, and he does it all.
there's about, thank you very much for the question, there's about 45 of us, but more importantly, it's more than 45 of us, because if you look at that list of organizations, those organizations bring resources. The
Right.
Low Country Land Trust brings a lot of resources. Centers for Air Preservation Property, Coastal Conservation League. So it's more than, we're much bigger than it seems because of the, what they bring to it. And of course, us Johns Islanders are very vocal about them. Hey, we contribute to them. We expect you to do, put a good percentage of your effort on the island, and they have been doing that. But again, it's a matter of working with them to ensure that they're visible to that.
Okay, great.
Just one that caught my eye, I'm
Sure.
sorry.
Yeah.
The Betsy Carrison Conservation Corridor.
So, anybody here from Kiowa Conservancy?
Oh, okay, then I'm familiar.
Okay, so
with- they've mentioned that in.
Yeah, so
okay.
I'll just real quick. We've been working with them, Donna Wyndham and her team, relative to, and it's coming outside the gate. And this latest strategic plan does talk about coming outside the gate, working in the Kiowa River watershed and so forth. And so we are talking to them and pushing is this whole corridor of Betsy Carrison. How do you conserve it rather than wait for the next putt-putt to come? That was that.
Thank you, John. They've been here and made that presentation. it didn't strike me that was Betsy, that's how they refer
Well,
to it.
that's how we refer to it.
Fair enough, okay.
Yeah. Any other specific ones? Hey, Charlie.
Something might be of interest, people think about budget, expenses. You guys are living on a shoestring.
No, we don't have a shoe.
Where did you get that point from?
Yeah, we are not a nonprofit. We have zero budget. I do a lot of Zoom meetings, so I got the basic Zoom package for $9.99 a month. But there is no dollars associated with this whatsoever.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I think we get a lot done, Charlie, for not much money.
John, there may be one more that I think would be pertinent to council, and that is, Mr. Mayor, if you look on that list, you'll see there are two things that I point out. One is the Santee Cooper Cross Island Transmission Line, which was to build a redundancy. We all lived through two years ago where we were down for several days because of the fact that the main line.
Right.
Because members of the task force organization, so these 45 entities, had relationships with Berkeley Electric, with Santee Cooper, and Dominion, we were able to help facilitate strategic thinking that would enable Santee Cooper to partner with Dominion to bring access across a common easement area.
Wow.
Now, where the benefit of that is, that meant they could get to it faster, less permitting, and less public outcry. There'll be some, because some people just don't want to see anything, we understand that. But in this case, the task force and its leadership really had an effort to help facilitate what I think is going to expedite what we all want to see is that redundancy. The other is the aviation authority. The city, years ago, allowed a development PUD to be put in place on the acreage right north of the authority property. You recall just about a year ago, the unfortunate accident of a private plane coming down. It came down right in that area. So the aviation authority has asked the task force to work with it on an opportunity with the city and the developer of maybe scaling that to a different level so that you don't have the unintended consequence of what's occurred in Mount Pleasant. And I'm speaking to those aviation enthusiasts, if you look at the Mount Pleasant airport, it's really going to be limited in the future what it can, the capacity it can take because of the development that's occurred around. There's soccer fields at the end of the runway.
Got it.
Oh, my.
JZI, I think, is a strategic gem for this Tri-County area. I use the example of LaGuardia when my grandfather would fly from here and land in LaGuardia in the 50s and the 60s. Today, you no more can think about doing that. But you go to Teterboro, and that's become the business airport. JCI, I think, is quickly going to become that, and very well, maybe beyond our lifetime, might even have commercial traffic going in and out of that. And some kind of commuter type situation. You want to preserve that because we have to remember CHS is a air base,
Right.
not owned by the Aviation Authority. And I was attending a conference yesterday, and I did hear the airport's back to 75%, to your point, 75% pre-pandemic limits. That's a quick turnaround.
Yeah. Yeah, yep.
So at this point, those are two that I think specifically can have impact to your constituents.
For sure.
I have a question as it relates to the Santee Cooper Cross Island transmission line.
Yes.
I know that Berkeley is currently in the process of putting in a redundant electric line, main line as well. Is that tied into this project?
It is. It's
Okay.
all sort of common. Santee Cooper is the utility, the corporate utility that will put in the line, Berkeley being the user of it.
Okay.
And then they partner now with Dominion in this, which frankly is unique and not been done before.
Thank you, that clarifies.
I mean, that is I think a big win for all the Sea Islands.
Yeah, and to kind of reiterate the point we were making, because of that effort we did with them, they saw value in terms of what we were doing, and now we've got members of, we've got folks from Santee Cooper and Berkeley Electric on the task force, because they want to kind of understand what's happening on the island and be able to have a resource when there's issues. So,
Go ahead again.
I went off too many times.
Turn it off.
Oh, this guy?
I went up and down. To do it.
John is not an IT executive.
Yeah, obviously. Oh, so, talked a little bit about, that's all it took, thank you.
She just walked over.
Talked about the other organizations on the island. I mentioned the two other organizations, the council and the community association. One of the things we realized, we talked early on, is when folks go to the city and the county and there's multiple voices, they just throw up their hands. Perhaps they use that as an excuse, but it doesn't matter. They say, well, you don't really know what you want. You don't know what you want, so just go away. And so we realized that, and so we basically formed this loose coalition among the three of us, specifically relative to land use issues, if you will, zoning. So when there are issues, and we all agree upon it, we go in as a unified front to the city and the county and say, hey, all of our organizations in unity are for this particular thing. Now, let me give you an idea. For the rezoning that would have added the houses, the thousands of houses, everybody was for this, and we went in as a coalition. Weren't able to do that with the putt-putt because not all three organizations agreed to that. And for example, the community association is primarily concerned with areas in the city. And they had a lot of members who were for the putt-putt because they had young kids. Regardless, they never would have traveled 20 minutes down here, but that's beside the point. And so therefore, we couldn't go in with a unified voice, but we do in many other cases. So if you see the coalition, don't think of it as another organization, it's just an umbrella group. See if I can do this. What do you think? So what I'm going to leave you with is that Johns Island is both rural and urban. And if you see that, see if I can do this. You can see that all of this and all of this is designated to be rural. And you can see how much area that is. It's actually easier to look on the screens, other screens. And so when you hear folks say that Johns Island is built out or there's no place left to build, well, there is still a lot to be built in the urban growth boundary, but outside it is still rural, and I hope that that's something you like from the standpoint of being able to travel through that as opposed to a continuous ribbon of Maybank or Folly Road or 17 to get off the island.
Great.
So that's all I've got, but I'd love to have some more questions if you have any.
I have one.
You get paid to ask questions, don't you?
I get paid to ask. So, we talked a lot about Johns Island, I understand, and it's wonderful. Just wondering, because as part of the task force, you have Wamala. How is Wamala connected to kind of the Johns Island Coalition? Because
No, they're not. They're not part of the coalition.
okay, they just have
there
a seat.
are members of the John. JT is there both from the standpoint. Well, he's there from the standpoint of the town of Kiowa, but I think he also along
Right.
with other members like Louis Hay and Pam Skinner, also involved with Guatemala. But as a general comment, we haven't engaged them as part of that coalition because it really is a Johns Island coalition.
But
And by the way, when
you
they-
make a wonderful point that the impacts that happen on Johns
Right.
Island affect Wahoo,
Yeah.
affect Kiowa, affect Seabrook.
Right.
My premise, if you look at what was the original voice on the island, were naysayers who never offered a solution, who blamed Kiowa, Seabrook always for what they perceived as their problems. And never thought of that we really are a community amongst these four islands. What happens on your islands affects us, what happens to us affects you, which is why we want to have representation. And frankly, the fact that Mayor Lacima and John Wilson have been original supporters of this going on now for several years. The current mayor has been supportive of maintaining that. JT gets to wear multiple hats. Similarly,
Mayor Greg.
John Gregg?
Yeah,
John
Mayor
Gregg,
Greg.
thank you. Continues to be supportive of that. Really, I think, facilitate to make sure that it's good information, it's valid, it's good input to get back from your respective peers. And I think we've been helpful by doing that.
Oh, you have. John, Mike, thank you
you.
both so very, very much for taking your time this afternoon for coming.
Yeah.
This is really very helpful. And the community is appreciative and thankful that you guys are spending your time earning those big bucks to volunteer your time and energy to work on this. This is, you're right, this is wonderful, just to hear the level of cooperation and coordination that's taking place. So thank you both very, very, very much.
And thank you for having Dan and Charlie participate. We've got our next meeting tomorrow, guys, so we'll see you there.
Look forward to it. Thanks, John.
We'll never slow down, Charlie. Never slow down. Thank you, guys. Now, Mike, you go back to work?
Yes, sir.
Oh, good. Okay,
Bye.
thank you.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Okay, everybody, tune up. Keel, a life plan village. So our colleagues from Bid Rock, I'm not sure who's going to take the lead. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, we went a little bit longer than we had thought.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have to help me to show how to,
It's not on the screen.
okay.
This is when the community really turns on the TV. We're all,
Right.
we're all interested in this.
Stephanie?
Yes?
Not wrong one.
Oh. I was gonna say, I don't know what to do with communications.
You meant do the blanking, or you want me to go there?
Well, I can't, it won't show up. I don't know what's. Just another pair of eyes.
That list of coalitions and groups and what they're working on is really remarkable.
She's just there.
How about?
He was actually created that.
Where's the file?
Right here.
And does this can you drag it over there? Is there a,
Drag it over where?
I don't know.
These are extended, it goes through another system.
Oh, there it is.
Wow, I've never seen it do that.
Just drag it over, yeah.
I think what we can do is, here we go.
Okay.
Okay.
Will it work?
That does work.
Yes.
Okay.
Wow.
Learn something new
Okay.
every day.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to come and present
to this board. We did this probably 2 years ago, but we're back now. So I'm Richard Ackerman. I'm the managing partner of Big Rock Partners. By way of background, Big Rock Partners is
Put your mic.
probably around 10,
Lift your mic up.
probably around 10, 15 years old now. We started out as a private equity firm, and we've kind of developed into a firm that specializes in very large senior housing projects on the East Coast. I live at Brays Island, so I'm local, 15, whatever you want to call it, if you consider it local, 60 miles away. So I've been familiar with Kiowa probably since the early 80s when I started my career in banking. And so this has been kind of a dream project for me, being so close, and something that I really am putting my heart and soul in, and look forward to not only building but managing. Our firm is going to manage it, so we're vested in Kiowa for hopefully another 25 years if I can stay alive that long. So just by way of background, because the project's changed a little bit, it's changed in size, it's changed in structure. Originally, we had designed it as a bit of a larger project that included more healthcare, more assisted living and memory care. So this is considered to be a CCRC, which stands for Continuing Care Retirement Community, which means you stay in one place as you move through the continuum of care. And we had originally designed it financially as a rental. And due to a lot of different reasons that have to do with the financial markets, our thinking, we decided to convert the project to a not-for-profit. So that's why it's called Kiowa Life Plan Village, and as we say, new name to come. We're in the process of developing a name for the project. So the project will actually be owned by a not-for-profit, which is not unusual at all in senior housing, and I know most of you guys are familiar with Bishop Gatson, and that's a not-for-profit. And it has a lot of advantages being a not-for-profit. The first one being that it's not run for profit, and therefore it's run more for the people that live there than for the owners, the equity owners, because it doesn't have to have an equity return. And so it changes kind of the nature of the project, both in how much money you can spend on building it to everything about how it's run. So it's really run for the benefit of the owners. And the owners are the residents. And the residents in a life plan type of community buy a contract that they buy the contract and they live in the building for the rest of their life. So it's a different type of structure than a rental. We thought it would be more appropriate for Kiowa, where there's more interest in owning. There's than thinking that a rental is not something really that I own and I'm not there permanently, because the idea basically, at least in our mind, for the Kiowa residents, and it's obviously not going to be just Kiowa residents, that all people are doing is moving from the back of the project to the front of the project. And nothing in their life is going to change, except they don't have a 5,000 square foot house now. They have a 2,000 square foot apartment, and everything's taken care of. So the project itself, if we want to start with the slides, I have to do it. Okay. Sorry. So just to put it in perspective, and again, the history is kind of important. Like most things in life, it happens by happenstance. My best friend from childhood owns a house here in Kiowa, and one of his guys that work for him were friends with, went to high school with one of the guys that worked at Kiowa Partners, and they were talking about real estate transactions and asked if my friend knew anybody that did senior housing, and my friend is an investor with me and knew that I did it. And we build very large, high-quality projects. So if you look us up on the web, you'll see some of our projects, and they're top of the market. And that's what the Kiowa Partners were looking for. Kiowa Partners have been looking for a senior housing project for obvious reasons, so to finish the community. So we're also in a place called Celebration, Florida, which is owned by Disney. And Disney recruited us to come and be that senior housing guy to kind of finish off the PUD. We have another project up in Columbus that is kind of similar. Nationwide wanted us to come up there. So just to kind of give you point of reference, if you can see in red is the building. And I don't know, because you guys are not looking at the screen, but it's
We have it there.
so the building is large, so there's no kind of hiding it. it's about 325,000 feet. Context, 20-story office building, it's about 325,000 feet. But it only has 98 dwelling units in the independent part and 16 in the assisted living care part. So there's 98 units of what we refer to as independent living, which is really just a condominium. And then 16 units of assisted living, which is, as it's stated, it's for people that need assistance in living. It's not a nursing home, it's not memory care, it's not regulates all private pay, it's regulated by the state, but it's not in the context of what people think of as nursing. Which means the majority of the building, probably 60% of the building, is amenity space. So this is kind of the look of the building. It faces Kiowa Parkway, and as you probably know or don't know, we had a terrible time with Seabrook. The Kiowa partners ended up having to sue Seabrook all about this curb cut. There was a concern. Obviously, I find it completely misplaced that this is going to cause traffic when it's just the absolute opposite. You don't, particularly in assisted and when we had memory, you don't see people driving, as I told them, when they have memory issues, at least you hope not. It's true that there'll be traffic from people that work there, and it's also true that, there'll be some truck traffic that delivers food, but in terms of any traffic guide that you will look at, that people decide. I practiced lived in Los Angeles and developed properties in Los Angeles in the urban center. So I know a lot about traffic. And one of the reasons I chose to be in the senior housing business is because it doesn't generate traffic. It's the second least generator of traffic of all types of real estate that there are existing. So the impact, it's very low impact considering its size on traffic. Plus, when you think about what a great amenity Freshfields is for a senior housing project, it's one of a kind. It's impossible for me to find a site, not only that would be as fantastic as Kiowa, but also has 6 restaurants and a shopping center within walking distance. It's just really unheard of in senior housing.
Is that 3 stories?
Yes, it's 3 stories and then 1 story.
And
The main building, which is all of and I'll flip to the next one. Underground parking, all the parking is underground with the exception of some parking out front, which is for the handicap parking places, so you won't see any cars. This is obviously a very expensive project to build. We have to build it up 18 feet. And then we're going to put the parking is actually inside the fill. Let's see. I don't know if we can see that. You can see it on your screen. Sorry? So you enter, let me see, you said there was a pointer.
Middle.
So this is the center entrance. This is the pond, the lagoon. This is the pool and outside area. So we include a lot of amenities, large auditorium, yoga and fitness, bistro, bar, dining with outdoor dining, state-of-the-art movie theater, and then a big wellness center that we have been working on with MUSC to run, in addition to the clinic that they're going to have across the way. Second floor, the only thing on the second floor, amenity-wise, we create a library, we call it a genius bar, to help people with technology. So that's kind of the layout. The elevations, we were at the ARB last week and they approved all the elevations. Again, it's kind of a low country style. LS3P, who's here as our architect, and I know that they've done work down here in Kiowa before. These are kind of the rendered, believe it or not, these are renderings. And they come out of Milan, Italy. And they're some of the best renderings we've ever seen. This is kind of the look of the lobby. Again, the name hasn't been chosen yet. We're going to work on it. We're partnering with Kiowa Real Estate to sell it. So it's going to be I think most people's perception is that it's not a Big Rock project. It's actually a Kiowa project, which is fantastic for us. This is the movie theater. We have a guy that I found out in LA that does the highest end movie home theater in all of Los Angeles, so you can imagine what that means. And he's never done commercial before, and he does all of our movie theaters. Kind of a typical unit. These are very large units for senior housing, 1,000 to 2,500 square feet, which is very large. With big porches, with no screens, there'll be big porches wrapping the whole thing. So, I mean, it has a real kind of condominium. You think more condominium than you do think, you know, what people perceive to be senior housing at least. This is a second picture of the lobby. This is the dining, bar area, bistro, and pool area outside. So, in terms of timing, the way that this is constructed is and when I say we, I mean the not-for-profit. So there's a not-for-profit, has a board, there are members of the board, one's from Seabrook, one's from Kiowa, 2 of them are from Braze. And so when I refer to we, I'm referring to them, not myself. We're going to be issuing $25 million worth of tax-free bonds, I hope, by the end of May, as soon as the IRS gives us the little certificate you need that says you're a not-for-profit. And with those funds, we will start the site work, which includes a turn lane, and I have Balfour Beatty's the contractor, and a representative is here from Balfour Beatty if we have any questions about the construction. And it will take, Tim, what, about 9 months? 9 months to discharge the site. We got earthquake, got to put earthquake drains in, and so during that period of 9 months, we'll be selling the units with Kiowa. Once we reach 70% refundable deposits, so it's not like a condominium, the deposits are refundable because this is regulated by the state of South Carolina. We also have to get a license for a CCRC from the state of South Carolina. We'll start vertical construction. We're anticipating that to be around January of 2021, and then about 24 months, something like that. Excuse me? 22, and then another 24 months from there to completion. Any questions?
Can you talk about price points?
Yeah, so the way that, for those who are not familiar with the CCRC, the way it works is there's 2 types of contracts we're going to be selling. One is referred to as a fully amortized contract, meaning you pay the money, so say it's $500,000, and it amortizes 2% per year for 50 months. So if you live 50 months, you receive no refund, not you, generally, your estate receives no refund. And the price of that is usually half of the other type of contract, which is you receive 90% of your purchase price back when you leave. And so when people ask us pricing, there's 2 pricings. There's the amortized pricing and there's the non-refundable. The non-refundable pricing is higher because you're getting a refund. Probably between 500,000 and 2.5 million for the biggest units. So it's kind of all across the board.
Is this in the city of Seabrook?
No,
It's in the city of Kiowa,
it's in the town of Kiowa.
town of Kiowa.
It is.
Yes.
This is
The
up,
road itself.
this is part of our annex property?
Yeah, so it's going through John right now for site, I think it's under site plan review right now.
Did not know that.
That's why they're presenting, but the road, as he was talking about, obviously it's in Seabrook, so they had to get approval to have a curb cut off of Seabrook, but the project's in the town of Kiowa.
The
So
state,
this was that residual,
sorry.
Yeah, this was
Property.
originally from Freshfields.
okay.
Yeah, the state gave, the state,
comes from us?
We don't provide water, and I don't think water and sewer, I think it's Seabrook. Is Seabrook providing your sewer? Yeah,
Okay.
it's not KIU.
so the state gave Seabrook the road. So then, then to cross the road, we have to get like 5 other federal state permits. And then we're in the town of Kiowa, so we got a complete mixed bag.
But Seabrook is gonna provide the sewage?
Yeah, Seabrook will collect the wastewater and treat it,
Yeah,
and St. John's will provide potable water.
yeah.
So we've gotten permission from both utilities.
We have all the permits. We have all the permits that we need to start construction, because we were gonna start construction probably 12, 14 months ago.
We don't have your building permits yet.
But, yeah,
You're just talking about from utility standpoint, but not
yeah,
from the
the
town.
site, the
Yeah.
utilities, the curb cut,
Yeah.
those, we don't have a building permit, we haven't
Pardon me?
finished. We don't have a site plan
Right,
approval either.
approved yet, but once you get
But,
that, you'll go to
yeah.
building, to our department, we'll have to approve it.
When would you start selling, did you say?
We've started. We've had our first interaction with all the brokers to explain the product,
Okay.
have training sessions. So we are taking reservations, so that the state of South Carolina hasn't seen a new CCRC proposal in like 5 or 6 years, if you can imagine. It's not like Florida or California where most of these are. And so we ask them, they take 60 days to approve our application, and we're in like the 35th day or something. In the meanwhile, they're allowing us to take refundable reservations, which are the same thing as the refundable contracts we're getting, but they said we could do it, so we're doing it. So we're gonna be launching, the actual launch is the PGA,
Oh, okay.
but the name is coming next week, a landing page and website are coming, the sales brochure is getting into the hands of all the salesmen like this week. So, we're ready to go. We have
Good.
units, we have pricing, we have timing, we have financing, so it's a real project, and we're really gonna start it.
From your experience in other locations, do you have relationships with skilled nursing facilities?
So the way that the skilled nursing is, we have an agreement with Bishop. Bishop built 100-unit nursing
Right.
building.
Right.
And to get that certificate of need with 100 units, which is super large for
That's
nursing
very
for those, they have to open it up to the whole community.
Okay.
So we made a deal with them, so our residents will use that facilities. Part what I didn't add is the attractiveness to a CCRC than a rental is the residents get a discount
Okay.
on their assisted living
Okay.
and on their nursing.
Nursing.
So it's something like 40%. So if our rack rate for assisted living is 10,000, you pay 6,000.
Oh, okay.
And the same with nursing. I mean, the original construct for a CCRC was a hedge against healthcare costs.
Right.
And the traditional CCRC had nursing. The industry's moved away from nursing because so many, first of all, it's very difficult, expensive, and it's very unprofitable given the change in Medicare constantly. More people today are using home health, staying longer in their apartment. They're living
Right.
longer.
Yeah.
And nursing's turned into a hospital substitute for when you get your hip replaced and you recover. It's not the place, as they say, it's not the place you die anymore, the way nursing was 20 or 30 years ago. It's a completely different product today, so we don't trade in that product.
Well, that's a big selling point, the fact that you have that relationship and provide that, it will to the resident be, a discount will be provided, that,
It's embedded in the cost.
yeah, that's,
Can you address the delivery of healthcare to the residents? Originally, I'd heard that there was going to be MUSC physicians on site, that they would be devoted strictly to the unit, but that there was plans by MUSC to eventually open something up to the community. Is that still in the works?
Well, now that they're building the building
Right.
across the street, right, they're gonna have actual healthcare,
Right.
which was, for us, was obviously gigantic, and we're a
Right.
big financial supporter thereof.
sure.
Ours is more of a health and wellness clinic. And MUSC is probably the most progressive telehealth hospital in the country, because most of the Medicare money that came with Obamacare, the state didn't take, and they used it instead to promote telehealth because the state's so rural. And so it's gonna be more a telehealth kind of wellness setup, probably less people because the people across the street, but there'll be people there. So it's not gonna be the primary touch point for them. The hospital is across the street.
But I would imagine your concept of a assisted living from a medical perspective is probably broader, greater than it's, 5 years ago or 10 years ago. You're probably gonna provide,
Well, generally speaking, you're seeing a higher acuity in assisted living
right,
than maybe you have in the
in the
past.
past.
And that's almost more because people are living longer.
Sure.
And so you're
And
seeing a
they're
higher
staying
acuity at a
Mhm.
longer, at a later date.
But I mean, will you have nurses on the units or no?
So the inside assisted living, there's nurses, there's one nurse per 16,
Right.
which is why you do them in
Right.
the 16s. But there's really no, in assisted living, there's no, anything that penetrates the skin, you don't do, to kind of give you the sense of it. It's not a healthcare
I understand.
alternative.
not
It's for people that, I would say the number one reason people move to assisted is mobility. Wheelchair, heavy
Right.
walker. So therefore, if you don't have the mobility, you have a problem going to the shower. You have a problem getting out of bed. You have a problem, so you need assistance. Most people, especially wealthier people, will have a live-in, or have home health. This is a solution. Assisted living is a solution for people that either can't afford it, though it's expensive now. A lot of people, and it wouldn't surprise me, demographically here at Kiowa and Seabrook have long-term care insurance. The policies that were sold in the 80s and the 90s that General Electric is choking on today, that everybody stopped writing because they're so lucrative for the person that owns the policy. They pay $10,000 a month. A lot of people of this demographic and a lot of our other projects have that, and that's only good for assisted living. It's not good for independent living. So we design our units so that they're very large, so people can live essentially in assisted living and they don't have the acuity. You see a lot of that as well.
Good.
The assisted living will be open to the general public, but it's reserved for the people that live there. So if we have 98 units, probably 130 or 40 people, we expect 3% per year to be moving through the continuum. So we'll have other units of the 16 that will be open to the community.
Very good.
So you said you had 90+ units?
98 units,
98.
And then assisted living?
16,
16.
right,
Okay.
which are in this. So the building in the U shape
Uh-huh.
is the assisted living. It has its own
Oh, I
entrance,
see.
own garden. Anybody that's in the assisted living has complete access to all the amenities, which is a huge benefit, because the typical assisted living dementia box, I mean, you have them here on Johns Island and Mount Pleasant and so forth. They're not amenitized because they're kind of
Right.
self-contained little units with their studios, and they're very small units, and there's no amenities. And part of our design is to allow the assisted living care people to participate in the movie theater, in the dining room, to the extent that they're mobile enough to make it. And a lot of people have friends, or say your spouse needs assisted, you're still in your independent unit, or your friend moved to assisted, they share they have their own dining room, but in our buildings, they always come over and mix. So it's
That's
not segregated the way it
Right.
is.
That's much better for them.
Yeah. I mean, the key for us, basic in our building plan, is socialization is what makes you
Right.
live longer.
It
The
does.
reason people here are at Kiowa is because it's a social setting, they're very active. And so what we want to do is extend the life. And one of the things that I didn't mention is Kiowa Partners is allowing people that have a membership, when they move here, to continue their membership. So like I said, for a Kiowa resident, and we've also approached Seabrook about the same, hopefully we've buried the hatchet over there. We've approached Seabrook about doing the same thing, and they're going to let their members keep their membership. And so you're really just moving from one part of the island to the other. Nothing really changes for you, excepting you're not in a house anymore, you're in a condominium. And you have services and you have all the amenities on site. And God forbid you need the help is there.
I just have, could you go back to the site plan, please? Just have just two questions. That's fine. Just because I recall the conversations with regards to a couple years ago. And I can't tell, but are you guys having any type of vehicular access from your site to Freshfields, or is it just more like golf cart, walkable access?
I think the road in the
can't-
back, see the road in the back?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
connects to Freshfields.
It does connect. Okay, I saw that, but I couldn't tell the width of it. It almost looked like it was a golf cart size width. And then the second question, this is more for construction, because I know this was a conversation. I know Freshfields, I think, had a little bit of concern. Are you guys still, how are you getting it? Because I know also with Seabrook, there was a timing that you're going to be sitting on Bessie Carrison, and every so many minutes you're going to release a truck and all those different things. Talk a little bit about where the construction traffic, because before we were talking about going through Freshfields and during our busy times, I know Freshfields was concerned about having that many trucks come through. And then I know also about the timing trucks sitting on Betsy Carrison. If you can just give a little update on
Sure, and if,
that.
where I get it wrong, Tim will correct me.
Okay.
So, clearly, and I'm pausing just because, you know, this is such a business I'm in. I never can anticipate the things that bother people. And, you know, you don't know what traffic is. You go to the west side of Los Angeles, right? So who would think possibly
Right.
that somebody would think that there's a lot of traffic here? And I've been here, I went fishing around here to go look at the water from outside. There's some traffic here. I live at Brays Island. So I get back to Brays Island, I go, thank God I don't live at Key West, all this traffic, right? So I mean, I get it, I understand it. And so we looked at a bunch of different ways to put the fill on the site. We have to put the fill on the site. Forget about regular construction traffic. I think the concern was the amount of truck traffic during the peak periods, you know, during the summer, which is where it's gonna be. And so after a very long negotiated settlement with Seabrook, I think, Tim, we agreed to a truck every 10 minutes. Every 10 minutes, no more than 10. Well, the first thing, the most important thing is, this is the man that you want to call. Don't call me. Seabrook required, in the settlement, the legal settlement documents, which are a record, that Tim, this gentleman here, can only do this job. Now, luckily for Tim, he lives here. Not on Kiowa, but he lives around the corner. So I'm not sure whether that was intentional, you know, whether he had a side deal with Seabrook to make sure he's named, but he's required to be on site and supervise and go down this, you know, it's funny because Seabrook was more worried about it than Kiowa, but it affects the circle.
Oh, it does.
So and you know, they're
I wouldn't
concerned.
quite say that.
What's that?
That's why I'm bringing it up. I wouldn't quite say that.
But it's gonna be a controlled, managed, period of time, which is, how long is the whole period from start to finish with the trucks?
Yeah, so it'll go in phases, so we'll basically come in and we'll bring 2 foot of fill in, we'll grade that, and then we have earthquake drains that we put in. Then we started importing fill, but what we did to limit the trucks was we changed the surcharging, where we bring in a lot of fill, we let the ground settle. We switched it to a 2-phase, so we're not bringing in all the dirt and then hauling dirt out.
Okay.
So we went to a 2-phase where we can move the dirt from one side to the other to limit the amount of trucks that are coming. So we'll come in with a 2 foot of fill, then we'll basically bring it up to about 20 feet on about half of the footprint. And then that will settle probably over a 2-month period. So you'll get some settlement that'll down, then we'll basically grade, we'll shift it over. So you're gonna have some getting dirt in, and then it's gonna be quiet for a couple months, and all we're gonna do is have a surveyor come and check plates for settlement.
So the holding pattern, you're not going through Freshfield, so the holding pattern for the trucks would be on Betsy Carrison in the right turn lane and then on Seabrook Island Road.
Yeah, so what we're gonna do is there's gonna be a lot of communication, because we don't want trucks stacking, we don't want
Right,
them
because
staging.
it'll back up traffic potentially.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct, so that's where the kind of 10-minute interval comes in. It is very difficult sometimes with traffic, that if a car breaks down, then the next truck 10 minutes out doesn't get closer to this truck. So there's gonna be a lot of radio communication as far as that goes. But the larger trucks, anything over a 2-axle, will use Seabrook Island Road. So all our large deliveries, all that is regulated in that no more than 10 minutes, but it will use
So there shouldn't be too much interruption of traffic on Betsy Harrison right here.
Right,
Okay,
right.
thank you.
And I will add, the traffic studies that they did, basically, 0.2 of a second difference in the roundabout or something like that was so.
I remember the,
Right, yeah, I
It was
mean,
very, very minimal, but regardless,
the,
Richard
the,
agreed to put the 200-foot turn lane and just to
Right.
help.
right.
because they had to be in first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when it comes, as we all know, and I travel the 17 miles from 17, so I was wondering why the guy didn't bring up about the roads. I could see why, because it's horrible, right, getting to 17. Traffic is perception, not reality. And so we did everything, including the three flag man,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Which I've never heard of 3 flag man. You usually have 2 flag man, but they wanted a flag man by the gate at Seabrook so that he could radio someone, the next flag man, that someone was coming down the road on a bicycle. And we
Yeah.
said, that's the job I want, that's the cooler full of beer and the umbrella. It's costing us excessive amounts of money to do it this way because, to stagger it this way and do it like a ballet, and I'm sure there'll be problems and it's not gonna work perfectly, but that's what Tim's job is to make it work perfectly, so.
Okay.
What's
Thank
your
you.
excavation point? Where's this dirt fill coming from? How long will these trucks be on the highway?
Pardon me?
What's your excavation? Where are you getting the fill from?
A local pit on Johns Island,
You're 17, you're,
main road, River Road.
oh,
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so we'll be on the island where we're importing fill from.
It's pretty close.
thank you. Thank you all
Yeah.
very, very much. This is
Any
interesting,
other questions?
exciting project.
Any sales?
I'm gonna go home and check.
Okay, if you have any questions, you know where to reach us.
Thank you.
We'll be here every week.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very, very,
Where's
very
your
much.
office?
Uh,
If
it-
you're here every week.
My office is in Delray Beach, but
Oh.
I live over at Braze Island for this
No, you
period.
said you'd be here every day.
Yeah, every week,
Oh.
once a week. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. And now our friends from Coastal Science. Thank you for waiting.
Get it back now.
Hot in here. Isn't it? No.
This makes how many iterations of your annual Coastal Science report? This is,
I think this is number 14 since
14?
we did the 2006 project.
oh, very good.
We're getting on up there. I started in 2007, the year after, so I think the first report was one of my first reports for CSE working on this.
They're gonna have you keep doing it till you get it right.
That's because of that. She's like, I know how to throw it over now.
Well, I wouldn't have known what to do. It would have been like done, one and done. I never knew that it could do this stuff. Okay, if I couldn't see it on my computer, I was lost. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, thanks for having me down. I'm Stephen Trainham with Coastal Science and Engineering. I will start by saying Dr. Patrick Barano came on board with us a couple of years ago, and he did most of the analysis and report writing for this report, but he couldn't join us. He was a little under the weather after getting his second COVID shot yesterday, so I'll try to supplement for him pretty well, but I'm obviously pretty familiar with the project and the beach down here. I've spent a lot of time working on it with Jim and hanging out. So I'm going to try to go through kind of big picture. I'm trying to avoid getting down into the weeds on this. You can read the full report if you're interested, but I'll go through and highlight some of the major changes that we're seeing, things that we want to look for over the next couple of years. But overall, the big picture is Kiowa is one of the healthiest beaches in the state. It's been that way for a long time. You've had periods of erosion and accretion in various areas, but overall, I'd say Kiowa and Isle of Palms are probably two of the healthiest, most stable beaches in the state. And you've come out actually a lot better than Isle of Palms has, because they still have bigger issues on their east end, because they did not do the initial studies before it was developed like Kiowa did. Kiowa, before it was ever developed, actually hired our firm and their predecessor to study the island and recommend where to develop on that. And basically, any island in South Carolina, especially once you get south of the Grand Strand, is heavily influenced by the inlets. The inlets are the areas where shoals are constantly moving around, and those shoals really impact the character of the beach. The same is true here. So we recommended not developing on the east end and along Kiowa Spit, and develop along the central part of the island behind the, I believe it was the second dune ridge. So that's where we're at. Kiowa Island is, again, 10 miles long, so it's a fairly long island in the state. You have Stoneleau Inlet to the east, Captain Sam's Inlet to the west, and again, it's been fairly accretional over several decades.
Steve, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just if you could go back, from the light blue line, 1993, at Lagoon East. What's the distance between those 2 points to where it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, to where it is now?
Yeah, and I'll show some photos that kind of show this. Actually, I'll go ahead and just kind of jump ahead because this will highlight that. The shoreline basically jumped over 1,500 feet seaward in response to some very large shoal bypass events. And that shoal bypass cycle is when sand along South Carolina's inlets typically is on the seaward side of the inlet. If you go to some other areas like North Carolina, those inlets are more flood dominant, meaning the sand would be deposited on the landward side within the lagoon area. But along South Carolina, the inlets are ebb dominant, so sand is pushed seaward by the ebb flowing currents, and then waves take that sand and then try to push it back landward. So periodically we have these events where this accumulated sand in the delta is kind of released from the delta as the delta shifts and merges on shore. And that cycle can take 3 years or it can take 20 years, depending on how big the event was. So starting in the 70s, that top left image, there's a very large shoal that was attaching to the beach, and you see it offshore. And it may take a couple of years for that to migrate onshore. If you look down at 79, it's kind of an opposite view of the looking a different direction, but that sand that's on the shoreline was offshore and now is onshore. By 83, that sand is spreading out and is starting to look like more of a long linear beach as opposed to that blob that had attached in 79. In that 86 photo, the sand is continuing to spread on the beach while another sandbar is coming on shore again, so that cycle's starting over.
To understand the movement of these, the sandbar is what's moving to the shore. The shore is there.
The shore is there, however, the shore is constantly eroding and accreting in response to these sandbars. So while overall you're adding sand to the system, temporarily you can have severe erosion or severe accretion in response to that. So basically, while these sandbars are offshore, they're acting like an offshore breakwater. They're stopping the waves, so behind those sandbars, the beach is building out because waves aren't moving sand around anymore. But on the flanks of that, that's where you get your most rapid accretion, erosion, because the waves are focusing on those areas and sand's not coming into them. It's eroding. So, and that cycle will change as once the sand attaches, then it spreads back out and actually adds sand to the system. So you're always monitoring and trying to account for the net gain, but the temporary loss in some areas. And again, since we didn't develop, or Kiowa wasn't developed right along the shoreline, you have the buffer between the infrastructure to accommodate those fluctuations. A place like Fripp Island, when they were developed starting in the 40s, they basically developed on what would be the same as that flat, dry sand beach, which wasn't vegetated, it was very recent land. They started developing it right after a big shoal attachment. That shoal eroded away and they had to put up a seawall before the first building was ever finished. And that was a similar story along a lot of the coast. So we were hired before 2006 because of a very large shoal event had attached to the east end of the island. If we look at the higher ground on those images, that was the shoreline in the 70s. By 2005, we had those previous events plus an additional event that started in the 90s, or actually 2 events that started in the 90s, wrapped around the ocean course area and built 2 separate lagoons. We called one the East Lagoon, which is at the very top of the figure, and it's kind of the more marshy looking area. And then the West Lagoon is the water-filled area. And as the sand moved around, it didn't attach as one central blob. It kind of spread an arm out that trapped some water between the old shoreline and this new outer ridge. And there was a channel that flushed that lagoon that ate into the ocean course and really impacted the driving range. So we did a big project in 2006. It was 550,000 cubic yards of sand that were moved. And we moved that flush lagoon to the east, about 3,000 feet. That relieved the pressure. We restored the shoreline along the ocean course driving range and down along the back 9. And it was a fairly large scale project. That made it until about 2014. That channel that we moved had migrated back towards the ocean course. And really in 2014, it went from, hey, this is something we need to look at, to all of a sudden it started eroding at over 200 feet in a couple of months, and really was moving fast. So we were trying to get ahead of it so we didn't have to do a 500,000 yard project. We could do a smaller project and multiple projects if needed. So we did a 100,000 yard project in 2015 to move that channel again. Really trying to limit the size and the scope of it, both for cost, but to protect some of the environments that had become critical habitat. So we did that in 2015, and we've been monitoring it ever since.
Steve, back on that, this morning we had a staff meeting, and Dorota's our treasurer, so she asked Jim, because we're trying to look at budgeting long-term beach projects. So the question for this portion of the island, we did one in 06, it looks like in 15. Should we budget for like 2026, 2024, another 100 or so thousand cubic yards of?
Right. So anytime we're talking to a beach community, we always want to recommend have the tools in hand to respond to a situation ahead of time. What we don't want to get into is a situation where this permit's now expired, so we would have to go through another permitting phase. But we're in a much better situation where right now we would say that you're fine. There's no need for a project right now. But should the situation change and we can see how rapid things can happen, you want to have funding in place to be able to respond ahead of time. So I would say, yes, you would want to have, if not a permit in hand, at least a source of funding to respond to a project. And I think a 100,000 yard project would allow us enough volume to be able to accomplish something that would be restorative.
And what's that, for us, of course, what's that number? You said have funding, because we're putting so much money aside every year, but how much? We want to make sure we're enough.
So for construction of a project like this, I would assume about $5 a yard. So you're looking at 100,000 yards times 5 for construction cost. Permitting and engineering would be outsized for a project of this size because it's not a huge project, but it would require a lot of permitting and engineering just because of the habitats. And I think we're similar to scale to what was done in 2015 is, I would think, would get you well ahead of responding to a crisis.
Okay.
So that's
between 1 to 3 million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, but this wouldn't necessarily be a crisis. This is what could just occur without hurricane.
This could be fair weather erosion.
Because right now we're trying to create, with dealing with this buckets, and we have emergency, a bucket for the, event of a hurricane or something like that, where we have to step in and do something. But this is just monies that we should be planning for.
We have the beach renourishment fund that we're putting aside for beach renourishment, and then we have the emergency fund.
Got it.
So we have 2 separate pockets.
Right. And one thing we were going to hit on in this talk that's turning longer than I wanted it to be already, but we did the post-Irma scraping event after we had We had Hurricane Matthew in 2016. That set the dune back a lot. But again, fortunately, Kiowa is healthy enough that it was able to withstand that. After Hurricane Irma, it kind of got to the point in some areas, especially along Eugenia Avenue, where homes were threatened if we had another storm. So we did that post-Irma scraping project along Eugenia Avenue and Turtle Point Golf Course and some along the Ocean Course. That dune has held up very well. This is kind of the ideal spot for scraping if there is a hurricane event, because you don't have a large background erosion rate. You're not trying to restore something that's being lost. It really was responding to an event and helping restore that beach from that event. So that's worked very well. We'll talk about a couple of areas to break down the beach. We have the Spit area, which is Beachwalker Park to the west. West Beach goes from Beachwalker Park up to a little north of the sanctuary and the Turtle Point Golf Course. Turtle Point area goes from that Turtle Point Golf Course up to near the Ocean Course and the Beach Club area, and then the Ocean Course reach, and then the lagoon, which is what we just showed in the photo, and Stono Inlet. So I'll talk about those just to kind of avoid having to talk about 61 different monitoring lines. But we monitor 61 profiles. We'll survey every year. We go from behind the dune and tie into with our boat to collect a full profile of the beach. And then we calculate how much sand is actually within those sections of the beach down to where sand kind of stops moving around. So the big picture is, if we're looking over here at the net change for each one of these reaches on the right, black numbers are good. That means you're gaining sand. So the Kiowa Spit Reach is gaining sand. West Beach, which has typically been one of the most stable areas or slightly erosional areas, gained 4.3 cubic yards per foot, which is the most we've seen it gain since 2019, when it was recovering from the Hurricane Irma. So that was a good number to see there. That means that the Eugenia Avenue area has been fairly stable and gaining some sand. Turtle Point was a little bit erosional, losing 1.7 cubic yards per foot of sand, which is pretty minor from what we see in the state, but anything less than about 3 we consider kind of minor erosion. Anything over, from 3 to 10 is pretty high erosion. Anything over 10, like we see at Hunting Island, they'll lose 20 cubic yards per year. That's extreme, so just to put things in scale. What you will notice on the January 2017, that's responding to those hurricanes. You see a lot of erosion there, and then things kind of normalize back out. You'll also notice as you get closer to the lagoon reach, the numbers get a lot bigger in magnitude, and that's because we're dealing with the inlet dynamics there. So overall, the island gained 4.5 cubic yards per foot over this past year, which was a good number. We haven't seen numbers in the black in several years, and that is because we're getting a lot of sand on this shoal that's coming onto the east end.
That's good.
Overall, we had a fairly mild year weather-wise. We had a Hurricane Isaias, if I can ever pronounce that, was about the only main one that hit. We also did have Hurricane Teddy that was well offshore, but provided some pretty big swells, while we also had an onshore wind and a spring high tide. So that was another kind of event, but it was overall better than previous years that we've had since 2015. The biggest events that we've noticed over the past year or two are shifting, basically erosion of that outer lagoon area, especially further around the east end, in response to the shoal that's attaching. Now the shoal recently attached just within the past month or two, so we're going to start really seeing gains on the beach in that area. But adjacent to that, we're still going to see a lot of erosion. And the area that's probably most concerned is right here on this corner, where we've had a lot of overwashing of the berm here, so it's really encroaching into the marsh. You can see, and it's kind of hard to realize exactly where you're at in this channel from year to year, but basically this entire area overwashes during spring tides, and that makes the shoreline recede very rapidly. So it's been losing hundreds of feet over the past several years. The area of concern would be, the holes 4 and 5 area of the Ocean Course are not too far behind this upland area. So if this trend doesn't reverse in the next couple of years, that's going to be an area of concern for the Ocean Course. Hopefully this new sand that's coming on shore will restore that shoreline. But what we can't predict is how much sand is going to move to the north, how much sand is going to move to the south. That's something that will have to be monitored. I won't go into details here, but this is kind of tracking the change in that flushing channel of the lagoon. There's multiple channels open now. A channel is flushing that northern lagoon, which is now separated from the western lagoon. There's 3 channels that are open at any given time, and they are constantly in motion, moving around. But this area, just off of this old shoreline, has kind of been the dominant channel for the past couple of years. This shows, again, another photo. We'll kind of go through that because we've talked about it. So the Stone Low Inlet Reach on the very northern, or almost going into the west shoreline along separating from Folly Beach, was slightly accretional this year, gaining 1.3 cubic yards per foot. It did erode on the seaward side of that reach, again in response to the shoal. The inland side of the reach had gained just a little bit of sand on line 56. Or sorry, 61 and 60 are the ones on the inland side there. So they're gaining sand on the inland side while you're still eroding on the seaward side. And all these are in the report if you want to get down into the details of it. The biggest thing to note from the shoal along the lagoon area, because it's so dynamic, we basically draw a box, build an elevation model, and calculate the volumes that way. Because it's so dynamic, it's hard to do profile by profile analysis. But if you look here, this blue line, where it goes up about 3,500 feet from the baseline there, that was the shoal in 2019, and that black line was 2020. It moved almost 1,000 feet over a year's time towards the beach. That's how fast these things can move on shore. So that was in November of 2020. It's already attached now along that center point.
And that's moving principally because of the wave action?
The waves are pushing that towards the beach, while currents in the channel are pushing sand to the east, further seaward. So yes, that's moving towards the beach. And you can see the beach response, little smaller scale to see here, but it's starting to build seaward behind it, where that blue line is moving seaward towards the ocean there. So it's building out to meet the shoal as the shoal's moving in. Still well landward of where we were 5 years ago in 2015. That dune line's receded about 300 feet there. The ocean course area, the area actually fronting the driving range, moving down along the back 9, it lost 8 cubic yards per foot, which was about 72,000 cubic yards. It's accreting a little bit on the eastern end while it's eroding on the western end. But overall, and this is something to kind of keep in mind, is the beach is still recovering from all these storms we've had the past several years. So the dune is still recovering. Even if we see some volume loss overall across the entire island, the dune is generally gaining sand and recovering. And if you walked out and looked at the beach, it generally looked better along almost the entire island this year compared to last year, especially compared to 2 and 3 years ago.
Okay.
The Turtle Point area, let's show a couple of photos from 2017 after Hurricane Irma, 2019 in that middle photo, and 2020 in that southern photo, or bottom photo. You see the recovery there, that there's a walkover that's been highlighted. It's pretty much buried now. So even though this specific profile volumetrically lost sand, the beach is still healthy and gaining, recovering from these storm events. So we'll keep tracking, and you'll see some variations that are still related to how these shoals will kind of as they're just approaching the shore, they're kind of stopping sand from spreading down coast, which is the normal sand spreading from the east end to the west end. That'll get interrupted as these shoals are just about to attach. It kind of pauses that spreading for a while. Once it fully attaches, that spreading continues, and we should see some accretion. But all the properties in this area are well set back, so there's no damage or potential damage to infrastructure or anything like that in this area. Another photo of the Turtle Point area. You can see how well everything is set back along, especially the eastern end of that island, or that area. We'll show this figure just to kind of show the red line at the bottom is the 2000 or the 99 condition. So as long as we're above that, then we're in a better position. That shows Kewasspit, West Beach, and Turtle Point. So at Turtle Point, we're well above where we were in 1999. Along most of it, except for the very eastern end, we're much better than we were in 2007. The eastern end is the one that's losing a little bit of sand, but we're still in pretty good shape with the setbacks there. West Beach, some photos of Eugenia Avenue on the right side of the screen there. After the storms, and then you showed the dune recovery and the vegetation. There's the eastern end of those houses is kind of highlighted. That bottom photo is a different perspective, but the dunes are recovering. It looks very good. And overall, the gains, any gain in West Beach is a good sign. So 50,000 cubic yards gain there is a pretty substantial volume. Looking at the spit, we did, again, 2015 was a busy time down here. We did the East End project, but we also did a project with Seabrook Island to realign Captain Sam's Inlet. So we cut a new channel just off, a little further south of the historic position where it was cut in 1983 and 1996. So it was a little closer to Seabrook this time. But that area continues to gain sand and recover nicely from that project. It looks like nothing was kind of ever done there unless you really know what you're looking at. The channel is rotating, and it's honestly, it's rotating more than it's shifting to the south. So the seaward end of the channel out towards the ocean is moving a lot faster than the landward end back towards the marsh, which is a little different than the way it's progressed in previous cuts. But on the Kiowa side, that tip of the island is recovering very well. You're not seeing any more erosion of the corner, and it's really building out into a nice inlet shoreline there. And the area along the throat of the neck there has been stable over the past year, gaining some sand, so the dunes recovered there pretty well as well. So overall, the island gained about 255,000 yards over this past year. The majority of that was in the shoal that was attaching to the shoreline. The down coast change of a net gain of about 57,000 cubic yards is a positive for the past year, because we haven't seen that number in a little while. So overall, there's nothing immediate that we would say, hey, needs to be addressed. But like Stephanie was mentioning, kind of having plans in the future to address that east end, because at some point in the future it will need addressing again. We just don't know if that's 4 years from now or 14 years from now. So having money in the bank that's on standby to do that's always a nice thing.
That's the key.
But the recovery of the central part, the Eugenia Avenue area, the sanctuary, overall that looks very healthy right now. Just this last point, this is the attached shoal. This was a photo from just a couple of weeks ago. You can see that it's actually attached to the shoreline here at low tide. This would be the southern end of that shoal, so the ocean course would be back towards us off screen. That hook feature, generally those form when it's a large shoal. It doesn't just come on as one little mass, it kind of spreads out and starts to rotate. So we would expect that to extend towards the south and possibly trap some water between the existing shoreline there that you see and the new sandbar shoreline, but we really can't predict that with certainty yet. So something that certainly needs to be monitored, but as long as over the next 2 to 3 years that sand fully attaches and starts spreading, it should restore some of that shoreline and provide sand for the rest of the island over time. So I think that's my last, that's kind of a backup slide if needed.
So with us gaining sand, who's losing sand?
Well, Folly Beach is
Yeah.
putting sand on theirs every
I'd get into that.
every couple of years. Morris Island's losing sand a lot. And I mean, Folly's only stable right now because of the groinings and because of the amount of sand that the Corps puts on Folly Beach every year. Pretty much every other beach in the state at some point or another is losing sand again, except for Isle of Palms and Sullivan's Island are pretty stable. And then once you get to the Grand Strand, it's fairly stable up there for the most part, but nobody's gaining sand like Kiowa is. So.
That saltwater, I'll call it a saltwater pond, which probably isn't but the saltwater pond that now sits in front of the ocean course, which is sort of newly created, do you just leave it? Does it eventually fill in? What
it has been infilling. That was something that when we were designing the 2015 project, the erosion wasn't near as bad as it got when we actually had to go build it. So we negotiated with the agencies to say, give us a permit to do this. and we'll use up to 100,000 yards. We honestly thought we'd only need like 60,000 yards to completely rebuild that shoreline when we were doing the original design. So when it came time to actually do the project, the erosion got so bad that we agreed to a limit of 100,000 yards in that permit, so that it was kind of a compromise to say that we're trying to reduce the scope, so we're not doing a 500,000 yard project. So they agreed to let us do up to 100,000 yards. When it came time to actually do the project, 100,000 yards wasn't enough to rebuild the dune line, move the channel, and completely infill that pond. And that pond was also very highly used by shorebirds. So we were, to fill it in, you had been sacrificing a lot of very good habitat for the shorebirds. So we elected to just restore the bank as much as we could, and then leave the pond to fill in naturally over time. Now we thought that once we did that, that the sand that was on the seaward side of that old channel would just naturally kind of migrate in and fill in that thing pretty quickly. However, so much sand was out there that rather than being an overwashing berm, it just built a whole new dune line. So we had vegetated stable dunes there for a couple of years, which prevented that rapid infilling, because now you were no longer overwashing sand into there. It trapped sand from going in there. That's kind of changed. Some of the hurricanes have knocked those dunes down and helped fill it in, but then it still hasn't happened quite as fast as we thought it would. But it is filling in over time with windblown sand. I was looking at a photo of it from a different perspective from this March flight, and you can actually see a lot more sand flat instead of open water. But there's not a lot we can do about it because of the sensitive habitat it is. But it will infill over time.
It just give it time.
Very good.
Steve, thank you very, very much. You and your firm, all these years of data and information and guidance, so thank you. Thank you for coming this afternoon.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay. Wow. 3 15-minute presentation. That worked out okay. So.
Yeah.
Old business, none. New business. If we can, I'd like to take these one at a time instead of just one large consent approval. So, under new business, our first is to consider approval of the charitable grant recommendations. Once again, we had 20 initial requests for $183,000 that were reviewed in depth by the Ways and Means Committee, and the recommendation before us is for 17, to fund 17 of those requests for $150,000. So could I have a motion to approve, please?
I so move.
Second it.
Okay. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. To consider approval of the and Medcare contract renewal, I don't think this requires much at all. It's pretty straightforward. Ways and Means. Could I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The third was for the, this is the contract with LS3P in terms of the municipal garage improvements. I think all of you are familiar with it, had a chance to tour the municipal garage itself.
Yes, we did.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Just as an aside, it's interesting that LS3P, I didn't realize that they're the architects for the, for that facility. They gained some experience out here, didn't they?
Yeah.
It's wonderful. The outdoor spatial design for landscape architect for this site. Again, we talked about it. Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion in it?
I have one question.
You have a couple.
This was,
Oh, sure.
this was a source of discussion at the Ways and Means. Exactly what is it that we're approving
Right.
today?
Good question.
We talk about things from the
I
full
can
thing
have
to
Brian
the dead branch.
or Jim go up and let you guys know, whichever one wants to take it, or both, doesn't matter.
This is tab 6. Thanks, Brian. Hi, Brian.
Right, so So there was some discussion, and there were some things that the committee wanted me to go back and kind of tighten up with outdoor spatial design, and what they came back to us was a new proposal that was a little bit less expensive than their initial proposal, and what they are focusing on are the safety issues with the blind spots around the complex and with the dead and suffering plant material. So this proposal is what they're going to be focusing on after hearing what the committee was interested in seeing.
Thank you.
Maybe said another way, what it's not is a landscape design plan for this campus.
Correct. This is not going
it's-
to be a landscape redesign. What we're going to be doing is focusing on mitigating the safety concerns and the dead plant material to give some more life back to the complex.
Brian and I and
That's
Stephanie
much
and Dan
better.
kind of walked around, and Brian pointed out the areas of concern, and they, we better know what we're doing if we're gonna start how to resolve them, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Scott, did that answer?
I did.
Good, okay. So I think we've had a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
The evergreen, that's fine. The evergreen is the compensation study that Stephanie had presented at the Ways and Means. I don't think there's any questions about that, so could I have a motion to approve?
I so move.
Second.
Discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the new sign. And this is even different from what we had seen at Ways and Means.
Correct.
Right,
And
so,
Brian's going to give an update.
Okay, so just to give you all just a quick background of the conversations I've had the past week or so. So we got back a couple of three different quotes from 3 different vendors. We narrowed it down to, we wanted to further investigate 2 of them, which were Southwood, who has done the other signs for Kiko on the island, and then we've also had Fast Signs, who we have a relationship with, but not for something this extensive, and they came in as the lower quote, which was a ballpark. So I went back to both of these companies and asked to give confirmation on the timeline that we could be out and complete by May 10th. And also the big question was sourcing the timber. So where we are today is I have not heard any information back from Fast Signs after reaching out to them multiple times. So I think we might be able to push them to the side for now. So where we're left is with Southwood. And I think you all might have received a revised quote yesterday or today for their quote, assuming that we will source the timber. We kind of have to do that now if we want to move forward, because they will not be able to get it within our timeline. So basically where we are now is this new quote without the timber, assuming we source it ourselves, and if we want to move forward with them doing it. So, and I believe that quote came back. I can answer any questions about it if you need, but that quote came back just under 30. It's at $27,000.
Okay.
So that's where we are. If we want to move forward with this sign being done before the golf tournament, then we have to make sure that we can source the lumber ourselves, and that we have to be sure that we would like to pay this new revised quote.
Can we source it?
We're working on that right now. Mr. Prickett has been in contact, and it looks like possibly from initial conversations that we've had, we're still waiting to hear back. If you could speak
Yeah,
to that.
It's tough. It's the thing that has caused the issue is, and I think you all know this, but the timbers for each grade of this recommended signs change. And these 2 timbers are 18-inch square 12-foot long timbers. They're very hard to find, hard to get, hard to source. So we may know more this week, but we may find out
That we can't.
it's such a long
Right.
shot, it's not going to happen. Now, my sense is, and it's Brian's sense as well, that if this is not going to be possible, then we're not going to accept any of these bids.
Right.
We'll get the sign cleaned up. It'll be fine for the golf tournament. And then we will go through a normal process of securing the wood, making sure we've got it, getting competitive bids, and not paying a premium to rush it because it's not going to happen. So we just don't know at this moment. If we find all of a sudden the wood's available and we can get it here,
Mm.
then I think we look at these two companies and decide whether or not we should go.
I've taken particular notice of the sign since we've been talking about it. And I don't know that much about wood, but is there something that can be done to spruce it up, to make it look better?
Yeah.
We talked about power washing it, and
Right.
then when we add our landscaping in there, that would probably help. Right
Okay.
now, all the
Yeah.
landscaping's been removed, but
Because
we can probably have it power washed.
I'm inclined just to go with the current sign, given the, we'll see what happens,
Yeah,
but,
right, yeah. I mean, we need to replace the sign,
yeah, but it's
but
not
we
gonna
don't
get
have to
done.
replace it overnight. if we
So,
could, yes.
so when you come out of the traffic circle onto Kiowa Parkway, there's a sign shortly thereafter on the right-hand side. Whose sign is that?
That's ours.
So but we're not talking about replacing that
No.
one, so it won't look the same as the one at the gate.
We
But-
can also get to those at later stages. You know.
And
But-
isn't-
But we're, I mean, at some point, if we
Oh,
think, we'll upgrade that one as well, but that'll be a whole separate deal. Definitely after the PGA.
Probably, a much smaller, it's funny, you're down to much smaller timbers,
Yeah.
much
Right.
smaller sign, probably carved in wood. If you look at the one at the second gate that says Vanderost now,
Oh, yeah,
that's actually carved into the wood, like the sign out in front of our
right.
store, out in front of our town hall. This particular one would have raised
Right, that
aluminum
anodized
letters.
aluminum
It's just a
On
fancier
the
sign.
pegs, yeah.
Those would not be difficult to source, the wood be not be difficult to construct, and we wouldn't do it under the kind of pressure we're under. Where I was if we could get the front sign replaced before the golf tournament, that would be terrific. If it's a problem, then we'll wait.
So,
We'll clean
so
it.
my feeling is that if you look at what it looks like well, probably not right now,
Not right now.
but 2 hours ago, where they had removed all the landscaping, and now they're starting to put fresh landscaping in there. I'm wondering if we ought not just dress the sign up, rather than try to go rush the order of this massive timber and spend we're gonna spend a ton of money for the wood, so we're still gonna be over 30 grand for the sign. I'm wondering if we shouldn't just wait and get this one cleaned up, because we know we can make it look very presentable, even if you just don't do anything
Just
other than
wash
paint
it.
it.
Oh, I think that's right. I mean, you could stain it,
Yeah.
Yeah,
or closer, one of the things we had talked about shortly was we could we wouldn't do this now, but we'd cut the high bars off the thing that go up and then just stain it the darker color that the new signs are,
right.
and re-letter it, and you'd be fine for a while. But the sign's probably been there for close to 50 years. It wouldn't hurt to replace it.
No, it wouldn't.
But you're right, if we find, and I said, we were talking about this earlier, I said to Brian, I'll get a hold of Southern Lumber again today, if we get out of here before business hours, and get an update. And if he says, I'm still not
Right,
getting close, then I think we
just,
go with the cleanup. And after it's all said and done, we
We can do
pursue a
that.
logical
That's
revision.
what I think.
I think
At
that,
that time, would we then not pursue replacing all the signs in just one big thing and making them all look the same?
Well, we would use the design that has now been approved
Yes.
for the island, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And all the signs is
clean it all up.
actually
there's 3.
just, well, but
Two.
one of us, the resort owns the one
Yeah.
that says, the
Oh,
golf
the
tournament.
golf tournaments, right,
2021.
right.
We don't own that one.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's not
They
our
actually
sign.
own
Resort
two.
sign.
That's the sign I was talking about.
Yeah.
That's not our sign.
No.
There's a little sign before you get to
oh,
that one,
no, I know
right
that
on
one.
the circle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's ours.
gotcha.
So we only owe two signs. It
Okay.
would be much easier to do the two at once if,
Yeah, yeah.
but that little sign, you know, is easy to execute sign.
Dan, I can't help but wonder if your contact says, I can do it, well, it's gonna cost. He's gonna be able to do it at a premium, because as you've described to all of us, that getting this wood is gonna be difficult in the best of circumstances. So whatever the circumstances are, A, B, the landscaping is just going in. And then C, we're creating a self-induced
Stress.
pressure. And that, you know, now we gotta get the sign, gotta get the
Stress.
site, we got the force to do it. On April the 6th, working towards, you know, what is that, 30 some days. I just can't help but wonder, clean it up, wash, you know,
That's how I
power wash it, maybe stain it if it would take stain. Put this beautiful landscaping in, it will look wonderful. I don't think,
I think so.
And if anybody from, you know, Maine comes to the tournament and complains about our sign, we can tell them that, you know, if you'd have brought some wood with you, we could have fixed it.
and this way you don't have to,
Do that.
you don't have to go
What
out.
would be interesting is to find out, we now know what the sign company was gonna charge us for the wood.
About $9,000.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we're gonna, it'd be interesting if we can get a quote of any kind, even if it's not delivered.
Right.
See what the lumber company can get the wood for.
Well,
Yeah.
are we saying that we're just gonna hold on this? There's nothing to take a motion on, because we don't have
Right, we don't have anything to add.
anything to add.
I think, I was looking, they would have to move to take it off the table, because they made a motion in a second.
so.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you have
I
to
move
move
to
to take it from
table.
the table.
Could
I move to table.
Move to table, is there a
Our
second? Any discussion?
I have I don't know if this is the right time. I have a question about landscaping.
Well,
It wouldn't be for this, so you need to go ahead and vote.
Okay,
We need to vote on
all in
okay, I'm
favor of
sorry.
tabling the sign?
All in favor, right.
Okay, approved.
Aye.
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 That concludes, old business. I'm sorry, Mary Ann, you had a-
You had a question,
I have a question about the landscaping. Is it gonna be done
yes.
by the PGA? Because I don't see it.
Most of it is all in now. They have, they're supposed to be done by April 15th,
Our walkthrough is April 26th.
April 26th.
Early next week, if you have to think.
Yeah, I think what they told us was the 15th.
I'm just looking at it, and I'm not even talking about the triangles. I'm talking about where the grasses are. It just, I don't know. I think we're paying a lot of money for something that I just don't see it.
Well, it's all, and I was just looking to see, because they sent us an update, and just about everything, like, I believe all the trees are in.
They were pulling drip lines yesterday along it.
Maybe I've been doing that, but that's done. That part of the projects from our standpoint is done. So I was just
well,
looking to
let's
see.
let's talk
I
about
can-
this later, Mary Ann, you know, want to keep this agenda going, if that's okay. We're getting close to 4 o'clock.
Okay.
So could I have a, motion to go into executive session, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. We're going into executive session, so thank you all.
Do we have to go to
Steph-
the,
We go, no, we go into that
We go
room. We
over there.
leave and go into that room.
we go to the conference
Or if
room?
it's just council,
I think it's just Councilman Yuka.
well, we have one person from Kika. How are you? It's from Kika, so we do have someone from the public
We
here.
should go in there.
Okay. So we adjourn into the other
Yeah,
room.
we adjourn in there. If there was nobody here, we could have stayed in here and just turned everything off.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all.
I don't have my copy. Do you have your copy of the LOI?
I have one copy.
Well, I don't need one. I'm just saying, it's a copy, so I'm not gonna. Mary Ann, just to let you know.
And you can just forward that to me.
Yeah, so
We went in there and she left.
you should realize that there was nothing more
All
to
the
stay here
time
for.
she was here. Oh, my.
Plus, they close at 4.
They do, oh yeah, for commuting purposes.
Yeah. Kika, yeah.
So Stephanie, we're good? Okay. Could I have a motion to exit executive session and resume regular session?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Could I have a motion for approval of the execution of the letter of intent?
I so move.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Please let the record show everybody supported the letter of intent. Town administrators report.
Wait, I can't hear you. Wait just a second. And we're gonna do that, because we came out, we actually made a vote. Normally, she was just asking about the normal blurb that you say when you come out of executive session about no action taken while you were there, but since we came out and did an action, I think we're okay. And so, I think we're okay, or you need?
Well, the action is listed under.
Right, yeah, we listed the action,
Yeah.
so I think we're okay in this case.
We took an action.
Yeah, I think we're okay in this case.
Okay.
Town administrator report. The only thing that I have is, as a reminder, I think I've been saying this, unfortunately, I'm sorry, probably for the last 3 meetings or so, that based on our emergency ordinance that we did, council put in a clause there that any money collected through fines, if we had to write fines, and we did early on, that we would take our portion of the money, because of course we get a portion and we have to send the state their assessment portion, but just the town's portion of the money, that we would donate that to an organization, nonprofit, that impacted hospitality industry. And we have $5,800 that we've collected.
How much?
$5,800. And so we need to, if we want to go ahead and move forward on that, we need a recommendation of where, in a discussion.
Since this money is earmarked for the hospitality business, I would like to suggest that we donate this money to the Barrier Islands Free Medical Clinic, because they opened up their mission about 1.5 years ago to include the hospitality workers, because they are frequently without health insurance, and Barrier Islands is the provider of last resort. And looking at all of the charities that we support, it's the one that seems the most obvious to me.
And can we earmark, if it's approved, I can also make sure it's earmarked specifically for, I'll let them know it's earmarked for that
For the
program.
hospitality.
And I support that wholeheartedly, because I know somebody that works there, and one day she was there, and there are 42 applications that came in for food service workers for help.
Wow.
So that's a great,
So if everyone just,
Is that a motion?
or just consensus, but if we want to make it a,
I mean, I think that's a great place.
yeah.
okay.
I think everybody.
Yeah.
I don't think we could really vote on it.
No, because it's
Okay.
not on the agenda, but it's just consensus that I just need.
Okay.
Okay,
You got it.
great,
Great.
thank you. Other than that, I have, just as an FYI, was put in our town notes, I believe, or e-blast, but we're also, from municipal building, effective May 1, we're going to an 8 to 4 office hour as well as Kika, so we'll be in the same schedule as them. Of course, you all have keys, you're welcome to come after 4 o'clock. If we have meetings, obviously the staff, we're still here until the meetings are over.
Of
But
course,
you
we
all
know
have,
you're gonna be here anyhow,
I know.
so.
You guys have cubicles, so of course you're welcome to come to the building anytime you like, just put your code in, so you don't set the alarm off, but just to let you all know that. And there's nothing else now unless you have questions for me, but I know all of you all have reports, so I'll let you go ahead and do your reports.
Okay. John?
So, the only thing I have to report on is on the housing study. We assembled the work group last week to start the discussions on kind of what projects do we have going on that are in support of that report. It was Stephanie, you can agree or disagree, but it was a surprisingly robust conversation. very participative, and I think we all understand which things we're trying to do to enhance and sustain the value of the
Brand.
the brand and the housing market. So we're gonna, after the PGA, we're gonna meet again and sort of take a more operational view of what things are going on as we progress down through the year.
Okay.
So
It was good. It was a good meeting.
You
I guess
did,
the other committee I'm responsible for is.
you did a
Public
good job running the meeting.
Well,
Well prepared,
I
the
was-
slides, was a good, that,
Diana was a great contributor, but
Wow.
the one that surprised me was Roger Warren. I'd never been around him, so I didn't know whether he was gonna participate or not. He was great.
Yep.
Of course, the next day at the golf course, he didn't know who I was.
it's
So,
because you had your ball cap on.
well, maybe. The other thing is that I've got oversight of the Public Works Committee. I can tell you what I see on the plantings. Stephanie, could you bail me out here and maybe
Okay.
give an update of where we are on the plantings
Yeah.
and so forth?
On the plantings, so we are pretty much done with the plantings, with the exception of the triangles, which you're gonna start seeing, which is gonna drastically look different, because right now it's just basically the shrubs. So the shrubs are gonna come out, they're gonna put the plants there, and we're gonna have, palm trees, and all four, maybe two, I don't recall. But, all the trees are in. 16,000 plus plants have been put in. They're
16,000.
1,000
She's counted.
plants. They've done irrigation, the drip irrigation. They're still installing that as they were putting the plants in. Right now, the last thing, I'm having them go back to look at this, but this was something that we had talked about under the previous council, was the right turn lane, where we put our new bike path and it
Right.
in kind of slopes. We had asked OSD that once that's installed, to go back to look at if we needed to install more plantings. We weren't sure. So I went by there last week, and I did reach out to them and said that area needs some planting beefed up, some thicker hedges, because right now I think it's just some sweet grass and some other stuff, and it's just not enough. So they're going to take a look at that. So we'll probably have a change order, hopefully not significant, but a change order to add some more landscaping in that area. We talked about maybe some sort of hard structure in terms of a barrier, but we just don't have enough buffer to be able to put some sort of structure there. So we're just going to have to really beef it up with landscaping. So we will probably have, well, not probably, we'll have a change order. I'm just waiting for them. They're gonna go back out there and then, of course, come back with something to recommend to add some thicker,
Yeah, a shrub that has some resistance to it would be good, so that if someone were to fall, that's where they're like,
yeah,
that they would go into bushes as opposed to.
just
Yeah, bounce
Under the
roll it into the turn lane. Right,
I'm
so,
just thinking.
so they are looking at that. So we will be adding some additional landscaping in there. But other than that, that's the that's the only update. Council.
And Stephanie, in terms of the e-blast communicating to the community, if that could be, I've gotten letters, I imagine you've gotten letters all along. We've asked the Public Works Committee to take a look at that, so at least an awareness that we are,
Right, turn lane, that.
we are trying to do what we can relative to the safety concern that people have. And I think, I've said, we all share that, but it becomes pretty limited in terms, the whole bike path has a concern relative just to the proximity to the road itself. So this would be something that we'll try to do in terms of a heavier, forward.
Because from our engineer standpoint, it's not a safety issue. It was designed properly.
No, I meant the proximity,
Yeah,
the
it's not safety,
distance.
so we're just adding some additional
Yeah.
buffer there.
Thank you.
Mary Ann?
Okay, comprehensive emergency management plan. One of the things I really hope to accomplish before I leave this council is to improve the emergency response for EMS, 2 cases on the island. Improving EMS response time is especially important with the increase of property owners who live at Ocean Park. Working with Chief Milliken, who's from the EMS group, Chief Walls, who's fire, Sergeant Phillips of the Sheriff's Department, We've developed some options. Stephanie's been part of this. The options are to get our own ambulance for Kiowa, to get our own emergency response vehicle for Kiowa. It's not all these things, it's maybe one or another. To fully staff Station 10, which is right outside of the Kiowa gate, or some combination of both. Fire has also offered to help staff their Station 10, which would be great for us. All of these items depend on funding, and you may have seen in the newspaper that EMS was just awarded $2.86 million to boost their life-saving ambulance crews, as well as approval to add 44 more EMS members. They take care of the whole Charleston County from one end to the other. And with the growth of people moving here, they have been stretched thin. And I will say that they got this approval from the Charleston County Council with the help of Stephanie, who made a presentation and comments at the council meeting that contributed to the award of this funding. The EMS Chief Abrams in particular spelled that out in a letter to me. So they really appreciate her help, Stephanie.
Oh.
Good, wonderful. That's all.
Did you want to do anything? It's not much on the Arts Council board.
Oh, Arts Council, no, they're still doing virtual. We had a board meeting the other day. They're looking forward to the time they can have live events, and they're looking at the planning schedule for next year and for the end of this year, which has been challenging because the resort has a lot of things that were canceled or postponed, and they've been taking spots too. So I think it's anyone who's trying to do anything with a public venue is going to be faced with this problem. And as far as the auditing committee, our financials have been sent out to the committee for review, and everything's fine.
Okay, good, thank you. Scott?
Yeah, you wanted an update, well, buckle in, because here we go. First of all, the environmental committee met on last month on the 10th. The major areas that we were discussed during that time had to do with the budgeting process for the non-conservancy related initiatives. And these are things such as the dolphin education, the bluebird boxes, the shorebird programs. We spent a significant amount of time talking about the bobcat population and SGAs. As most of you probably know, we had 5 unique bobcats that were collared during this last cycle. Blood was tested on 3 of them, and it came back negative for any trace of SGAs, which is very good. The other 2 that were collared, the vet that was on call was not able to get here in time to draw blood, so we have no knowledge about those. As long as we're discussing the bobcats, though, I want to let you know that Bobcat 600 was struck by a car on Easter Sunday and died. We have sent the body on for toxicology. For being tested.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's the doctor.
Yeah, I know. But again, I'm a pathologist, and polished public speaking is not usually associated with pathology. The other main discussion revolved around the research projects going forward as it related to SGAs, and especially the funding that is associated with it. As most of you know, there are 3 separate programs that are out there. There's kind of the bronze, the silver, and the gold, and we're trying to look at what we can do in terms of getting the funding to get the gold plan. Given the monies that we know we have right now, given what we anticipate the Conservancy giving, and what we're hopeful that the pest industry, control industry itself will be donating, we believe we can get to that $960,000 mark, which would allow us to have the gold research program going forward. So I'm very, very excited about that. Just as an aside, Kika has been trimming trees along ponds. You may have noticed that or not.
Yes, they have.
They have been very aggressive about that. That is to increase sun and wind action on the water, which will make the ponds more healthier. The downside of our cold spring, chilly spring though, is that the tilapia are not feeding like they should. So we're going to be seeing a lot of algae blooms coming up soon. Yeah. Because actually the algae blooms come up from the bottom and the tilapia feed on, and that when the tilapia aren't feeding, algae blooms come up, and so they have to spray as a result of that, which is kind of different. Also, a marsh management plan is being worked on, and Jim is budgeting $30,000 in his budget for a consultant to help him out with that program. Any questions about the environmental committee? We'll move on to the adaptive management program that Kika's running. I met with Lucas Hernandez last Tuesday to get an update on where he is with the plan. He's making very good progress since last month's update, and he's met with Berkeley Utility and Kiowa Island Utilities to arrive at measurable and meaningful thresholds as they relate to the utilities. As part of that meeting, he shared with me that Berkeley Electric was putting in a redundant main power line to the island, which I think the Johns Island Task Force also shared with us. Currently, and that is, the pun is intended, we hope to have better power soon.
You're right, but not public.
Lucas also met with the Department of Transportation, and they actually already have thresholds and criteria in place, and so he's just going to adapt those into his report and management. Disappointingly, he met with the Office of Coastal Resource Management and the DNR, and those meetings were not as productive as he hoped it would be. Those meetings all revolve predominantly around permitting, and right now, for example, for a homeowner to be able to do something on their property, they have to show that significant erosion has already occurred before any action can take place. You cannot go and show trend data that says, hey, the marsh is coming into my backyard. Can I do something now proactively to prevent it? What he came away with was that that's their current thinking and policy, but that it might change sometime in the future. Who knows? He plans to be ready in June to present his report. He's mulling over whether he would do it separately for the Kika board, then the town, or whether he would have a joint presentation. Or what we talked about was maybe having a joint workshop with him between Kika board and the town, so that everybody could at one point get their ideas, their questions, and any tweaking that they wanted, so that then he could come back and present a finished, polished report that wouldn't have to go back and forth between the various entities. That's where he is right now with that. I will let you aware that, I know you saw this, that the tidal gauge has now been incorporated into the National Weather Services system, which has meaningful impact in the short run for us, in that now then we will have the ability through the National Weather Service to issue alerts that says coastal flooding and high tides are going to be expected between the hours of such and such and so, much like you see in Charleston now. And we will be able to push that data out through our Code Red alerts. And also we'll be able to notify Central Dispatch and St. John's Fire Department that there may be transportation issues during this period of time. So that's what's happening on that front.
Who gets that? You said like push out the Code Red. Is that something like the National Weather Service?
The National Weather Service, we would tie, as I understand it, we would tie into the National Weather Service. And so when they issued such a thing, just like when a tornado alert or severe weather, however that process works, it would work the same way.
But who notifies them? Is that Lucas? Is that?
No, it's the National Weather Service.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
that's the tie-in.
Right. Okay.
Stephanie at the end.
Okay. And lastly, the Conservancy had its annual meeting on the 16th. Its annual audit for the last fiscal year was presented, and it was a clean report similar to the one that the town received this year. They continue to provide stewardship for to 52 properties that totals almost 23,000 acres, and they are beginning to expand beyond the gate as part of its commitment to the larger community. And I think y'all heard here earlier that they are now a member of the Johns Island Task Force. So that's a very I think that's a positive thing on there. Their major projects that are of prime importance relate to marsh vulnerability, the groundwater health, and climate impact studies. And those projects are going forward, and there's not really much to report on those. And they're starting to have discussions about green infrastructure as it relates to on the island, and not just with institutions and commercial properties, but also they're working with the ARB and involving them to see if the ARB would come up with some things that would be, quote, pre-approved for individual homeowners to do, so that it would streamline that process should it happen. And that's my report.
I think that relationship with John and the Johns Island Task Force is wonderful. I mean, whether whether there's any properties themselves that actually become part of the, you know, the inventory of properties, time will tell. But just the collegiality, there's so many professionals on that conservancy that could help. I mean, it's just good stuff to get those types of people working together.
Well, this morning I attended a 2-hour orientation for their onboarding trustees today, and it is amazing the depth and breadth of
Yes, it is.
knowledge that they have.
Yes, it is. They are quite a group. Daniel?
I'll be much briefer. The only-
How can you not?
And I won't talk about Ways and Means. The State Accommodations Tax Committee meets this next week. To refresh your memories and actually tell you who's on the committee this year, because there are some changes. While I chair, appointed by the mayor, I'm a non-voting member of this group. They decide how the state accommodations taxes are gonna be split up. David Wall will take over Gary Rice's position as
Arts
chair of the
Council.
Arts Council. By the way, Gary's obituary was in the morning paper, if you didn't see it.
Today?
Yes, today's paper. It's worth reading. Roger Warren's a member. Pam Harrington is a member. John Wilson, former member of this council, is a member. Diane Mezzanotte is a member. We all know Diane. Amy Anderson, who I don't know, I'll get to meet her for the first time, is with South Street Partners and the head of marketing, I think, for them. And then Don Semler, who is the owner of the Andel Inn, is a member. So what's interesting about this year, the current year we're in, the budget they all agreed to, and they all took some cuts, almost all of them took some cuts, because we didn't think it was gonna be a big year. We actually are gonna end up with more money. So we have two issues to discuss: what to do with that money, and should more money be spent this year, since we have some additional funds. If there are needs, let's get it spent. And then setting the budget for 2022, which is what we'll all do. The town, as you know, is a beneficiary of that, and it funds things like beach patrol and the sheriffs and some other things we do. But all of those other participants can also elect to apply, and many of them have for state aid tax funds. Anyway, that meeting is a week from tomorrow. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Dan. Any general comments?
No.
Citizens' comments? Anything?
John, that's you.
Stephanie, anything from anybody?
No comments.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes.
So moved, second.
We're adjourned. Thank you all very, very much.